I don't want to see a recast Steve Rogers. Hey everybody, Colton here, and this question comes to us from Casey. Casey writes, did the Russo brothers just spoil that Steve Rogers survives Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars in that article that they did with Empire magazine, stating that he retains a central role moving forward? All right, thank you so much for the question, Casey. So, yeah, the Russos did that cryptic, quite frankly, annoying how cryptic they're being. Cryptic interview with Empire magazine, where it was kind of built up to be like this big Doomsday interview with the Russo brothers, the directors of the film, and it was kind of a big nothing burger. But in that article, like you're saying, there's a quote where they say, and they're talking about, Chris Evans being back as Steve Rogers, we have a special affinity with the character. We can't see this narrative without his central role in it, basically. The special place he holds among the ensemble, he sort of retains that moving forward. Okay, so we know that, yes, the Russos do have a special connection with Steve Rogers. He's been in every Marvel movie they've done. They did Winter Soldier, they did Civil War, they did Infinity War, and they did Endgame. And Steve Rogers, of course, for Winter Soldier and Civil War was the main character. But in Infinity War and Endgame, he was also like the main character, or, shared that position with Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark. So, yeah, I get what they're saying there. It makes sense that they would bring him back for Avengers Doomsday because of that special connection they have with the character. But even if the Russos weren't coming back for this movie, it would make sense to bring back Chris Evans, Steve Rogers. Because here's the thing. Insert image of Ben Grimm. Steve Rogers and Tony Stark, they're the heart and soul. I believe it's John Campea who has said that. And it's true. They're the heart and soul of the MCU. They're the two main faces of that franchise. And regardless of if the multiverse saga had been successful and was received well by the general audience, I would still think you bring back the character of Steve Rogers, because he is such a central character to the comics and to the MCU. And he still has so much story to tell, even in Endgame, where, a lot of people make the argument, especially when they confirmed that Steve Rogers was coming back. I saw a lot of people saying, oh, so this meant nothing. And they show the picture of him old. What do you mean it meant nothing? What does that mean? It set up so much because he has a shield now. He went and had a life. It's so clear now, but it was clear then as well. He lived so much life that we still want to see the story of. We want to see how he got that shield. I've had the theory that it's actually like a bootstrap paradox thing, where the shield that old man Steve Rogers gives to Sam Wilson, his younger self, the younger version of that old man Steve Rogers, he will have already lived out the events of Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, and he'll likely get that shield from Sam Wilson's Captain America to then give to him. And the shield is just in this eternal, loop. But that's not what this video is about. Anyway, what I'm saying is that the character of Steve Rogers and the movie star that is Chris Evans and his connection to this franchise, it was kind of just a no-duh to bring him back. Same thing with Robert Downey Jr. Now, albeit they're coming back in different ways, Robert Downey Jr. is playing Dr. Doom. I still think that he and Tony Stark will be revealed as variants, but that's also a discussion for another time. But as for Steve Rogers, it just makes perfect sense that he would be there. It doesn't soil anything. It doesn't ruin anything. It makes sense. And yes, with the Russo brothers being the directors of these two films, it makes even more sense that he would be there. But to answer your question about are they spoiling that he survives Doomsday and Secret Wars? Look, I've been saying that I hope he does survive Doomsday and Secret Wars, and I hope that when we get that MCU reset at the end of Secret Wars, I don't want to see a recast Steve Rogers. I want Chris Evans to remain the Steve Rogers of the MCU for a few reasons. There's a lot of cool stuff you can still do with the Steve Rogers character, like they do in the comics, where he's not Captain America, but he could run for president of the United States. He could be the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. He could do, stuff as Nomad. There is so much more story to tell instead of just recasting Steve Rogers and telling more Steve Rogers Captain America stories. Yes, there's a time for that way later down the line, but grow this universe, grow the story, build on what you already have. And one of the key reasons that the MCU is doing a semi reboot instead of a full fledged reboot is so they can continue to build on the stories and all the different blocks of the foundation that they have built. They don't want to start completely over. So when you have somebody like Chris Evans, who is so associated with the MCU, beloved by the general audience and fans, and they love his character not just because he's Captain America, they love him as Steve Rogers. It just makes sense from not only that story perspective, but from a financial perspective, doing what's best for the franchise and that gets people excited and gets butts in seats. Have Steve Rogers remain a pivotal character in these movies moving forward. And that doesn't undo what they did in Endgame. We can learn that everything that we're watching Steve Rogers go through is stuff that he already went through. And then he comes back in Endgame and he will have already lived that life. So we're getting to see that life that he lived. Now, as far as so I think that he should survive past Doomsday and Secret Wars. But as far as does it spoil that he's going to? No, because I didn't read what they said here is them saying that he's continuing beyond Doomsday and Secret Wars. I've seen several people say that they are, including our Casey here, who asked the question, and I can see why you read it that way. But let's read the quote again. We can't see this narrative without his central role in it. The special place he holds among the ensemble, and that's another thing I've said, he really does serve as a glue to make this whole thing work. He sort of retains that role moving forward. When they say that, he sort of retains that role moving forward. I think when they say that role, they're referring to the role he's had in the MCU all this time, and that like glue type role that he has served, bringing all these characters together and being that heart and soul of the MCU. They're saying that same role we've known Steve Rogers to have, he retains that role moving forward into Doomsday and Secret Wars. That's what they're saying. They're teasing Doomsday. They're teasing the role that Steve Rogers is going to have in this movie and that pivotal role he's going to play and how it's that same role he's always played and how he is a very important character for the story that they are telling. I don't think they are teasing that he retains that role moving forward beyond Secret Wars. Why would the Russos be even talking about Secret Wars or beyond Secret Wars? I think it's really clear that they are saying that he retains that role moving forward, as in, hey, we were just talking about all the stuff that we've done with Steve Rogers in the past, Infinity War, Endgame, and that role that he had in those films, he retains it moving forward into Doomsday and Secret Wars. He's a character that just has to be there because he's such a pivotal part of the franchise. That's how I read it. I do not read it as him saying, yeah, and he's around for the long haul. He's staying in the MCU post Secret Wars. I think he most certainly will be staying in the MCU past Secret Wars. But no, I do not think that this is the Russos confirming that. So there are my thoughts on that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it down in the comments below. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified every time we upload a new video. And thank you so much to Casey for submitting that question. All right.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.